Hey, what's up, podcast family? Hope you guys are keeping well. This week I sat down and chatted with Christine McIver. She is the founder and CEO of Kids Cancer Care Foundation of Alberta, beginning her work in her basement of her home in 1988 to now garnering national attention for her service to children and families battling childhood cancer. On the podcast, we talk about finding your stride as an entrepreneur, the myths when running a nonprofit, how to have a purposeful existence, and much, much more. Remember to rate and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. You get awesome local leaders and entrepreneur stories each week, jam-packed with their unique insights. Leave me feedback at joe@codessa.io on some of the stories or questions you want to hear. I read them all. Now to the podcast. Hope you guys enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Christine.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right into it. So for our listeners, maybe we should jump into your origin story.
Well, it's been a long time. Kids Cancer Care has been around over 25 years, but we've been doing the cancer camp programs in Alberta since 1991, which was actually the year that I lost my oldest son to a brain tumor. And essentially, I started the camp programs here in Alberta because there was nothing for children with cancer in our province. There wasn't a lot happening. There was certainly very, very little research happening at the time into pediatric cancers, and there was very few programs and services for children with cancer. And I just needed to change all that. I certainly didn't see myself as a change maker. I just was feeling so desperate for my son and his friends that I needed to do something. And so a camp for children with cancer seemed like the way to go. And so I started that in 1990, started the work on it, and then evolved with the help of the Cancer Society for the first few years, and then realized that we needed to do so much more for children with cancer. And so 1994 established Kids Cancer Camps of Alberta, which in 1999 evolved to the Kids Cancer Care Foundation, which it is today.
What were some of the challenges you faced when starting this awesome venture of yours?
Well, just about everything. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, except for starting a foundation was probably the only thing that I was actually had some background for as a paralegal. I knew what to do there, but fundraising, grant writing, uh, doing the programs themselves came a little bit more naturally because I'd already been doing it for a few years as a volunteer. But other than that, I think just about everything. I often use the term ignorance was bliss. Well, thank goodness I was ignorant about it because I think I would have run and hid about a million times had I known how onerous this challenge, this huge ideal was going to be. But persevered, surrounded myself with really good people, and it just came true. It was essentially taking my dream and sharing it and allowing it to be others people's dreams as well. And that was just to make an impact into the lives of children with cancer, and that's essentially what helped me through that. Every day, it's still the same story. That narrative never changes. It's sharing your passion, sharing your desire to make the world a better place, and sure enough, you find good people all along that way.
Yes, for sure. And what you're doing is definitely inspiring great action. But obviously, there's some challenges in the nonprofit sector as of right now with the whole pandemic going on. How has that affected you guys?
Well, it's probably affected us in every way, shape, and form, and not unlike my colleagues in the charitable sector and everybody in the business sector as well. We're all facing, working from home, not being able to have face to face events. and having to switch, really pivot quickly to online platforms for all of our programs. And luckily, I've got just a really top notch team that is there to help make things happen for us. That um, were really professional and had the passion and the desire to make sure that this could happen. So they pivoted quickly, made all of our programs online, and except for, of course, any of our programs at Camp Kindle, we can't go online with those because, of course, it's all shuttered for now. And of course, the challenge of raising funds. We raise so much funds by way of events that we've probably, well, I'd say lost until the end of the summer and maybe so much as the end of the year, and who knows beyond that. But I guess I'm setting my expectations really low so I won't be disappointed anymore. I think every day has been a disappointment since COVID raised its ugly head, and yet there has been silver linings in every day in every way. So it's been pretty nice to see the really resiliency of the human spirit, but also in our donors and in our families. Our families have been coming, have been there for us so much over the last few months, with the remarks that you've been there for us. We've got to be there to make sure that Kids Cancer Care exists for the future. So the families that are going to come after us are there for us as well. So it's been very inspiring and very heartwarming and encouraging.
Yeah, and stories of resilience and perseverance always come up in leadership and entrepreneurship. And it seems like through your guys' pivots and different ways of navigating through this pandemic, you guys are practicing resilience and perseverance to the fullest. And I really hope, like everybody else, that this pandemic is gone sooner than later.
Oh, don't we all?
So, jumping back into your career, what's one thing you wish you would have known when you first began your career?
Um, I guess it's something very simple. I think I I wished I'd known how amazing our community is, the community of Calgary, the community of Alberta, and it would have lifted my spirits in kind of the darkest days had I known how good everybody was going to be. There was going to be lots of no's, lots of door slams, and lots of sorry we can't help you, but just knowing how good and strong our community is probably would have uh, lightened my spirit and my load a little bit. And just the volunteering um, uh, community spirit that there is in Calgary and in Alberta has really been just such a heartening thing. So had I known that, I guess it probably wouldn't have changed my path at all, but it certainly would have made some of the sleepless nights a little bit easier.
Right. Yeah. You talk about door slamming and sleepless nights. What do you think your unique quality that's made you get through all those no's and doors being slammed in your face and all the trials and tribulations of your career journey?
So probably that I don't ever listen to the word no. I can't stand that word. I always laugh. My husband says, "You don't understand the meaning of no. You just think it's another way to redirect your question," and that's exactly it. I want to find another way to turn that no into a yes. If it's somebody telling me that it can't be done, I want to rephrase it or rethink it or just reimagine a possibility until I can get to the word yes. So ignoring the word no has helped me a lot. I know it's frustrated the bejeebers out of a lot of people because don't I'm not a very good listener that way. That you know, and I guess it wasn't me not hearing the word no. I couldn't hear the word because it needed. I was doing it for children with cancer and their families, and that's the probably the most compelling reason I had to change the narrative on everybody else's desire to shut me down or say it can't be done or you need to do things differently, was the power of all of those children and their families.
So, for somebody wanting to pursue maybe starting their own charity or even go into the world of entrepreneurship, what pieces of advice would you give them?
I would say be willing to do any lousy, non glamorous, ugly, questioning type of jobs that you have to do. You've got to, it's lonely at the top. Well, it's even lonelier at the bottom. I think that you think, gee, do I have to persevere through all of these things? And yeah, you do. You've got to be willing to put in the hard roll up your sleeves type labor, but you've also got to keep in mind that you've got to take the initiative, that you've got to uh, keep thinking in creative and different ways. And also, I know one thing that I really valued and learned a lot from was continuing my education, always be learning, and place a good deal of uh, emphasis on your professional development. Always be looking for ways to improve.
Yeah, you speak of always learning. Has there been any resources in particular that's helped you?
Well, I think the great networking opportunities of professional associations, any of the continuing education courses at the University of Calgary, University of Alberta, Mount Royal, any of those um, higher institutions of learning always have some really good courses. But I think you've got to be learning also from a mentor as well. Finding a good, strong mentor and establishing a strong relationship with them, I think, is also a great way to learn from. Professional coaching is also a great way to help you stay on track as well. So, if you can afford it and if you can avail yourself to it, of course, generally a mentor is free, but professional coaching, of course, is not. But yeah, I think it's just a good way to learn and uh, keep your mind open to other possibilities. I think that's probably one of the most important things that I've learned is keeping an open mind, and it isn't just a nice adage; it's true. There's always different ways of doing things.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, education never stops. I feel like one piece of being a business leader and entrepreneur is that you're always learning, always constantly consuming new content and ideas. And you did also mention mentors. If someone listening right now wants to find a mentor, what would be the best ways to connect with somebody like that?
Well, I think, finding a mentor is really individual to everybody. And if there's somebody that you like their style, I often will describe somebody as they have a nice way about them, and it's somebody that you would like to emulate. Somebody that has attributes and qualities and maybe leadership characteristics that you really admire and you would like to emulate and see yourself being more like, or somebody that's been really successful at doing something that you're really interested in doing is probably the right person to be your mentor. And so I think it's so individual, but just inviting the person out for a coffee or a conversation and asking them, would you like to be my mentor? Is this something that you could see yourself doing? And then have an expectations discussion about what does a mentor look like and how important is it? I think that's one way to find a mentor, but of course, it's going to be really individual for everybody.
For you, has there been anything recently that you've read or listened to that's really inspired you?
Um, yeah, you know what? I've been listening to. I like audibles. because I could do other things while I'm listening to my Audible. So, and it's kind of a lazy person's way of reading a book if you're too busy to do it any other time. But right now in my Audible, I'm listening to Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life, and I think that there's some. He's got some interesting discussions on there. So he's kind of my inspiration right now. But I'm also being inspired by the people on my kids cancer care team. They're coming up with some amazing ideas and some really different thoughts. And I think it's just essentially a pandemic drives you to different places. And what are you doing to really um, do things differently today? And letting your imagination go wild, I think, a little bit too is also you know causing me to reflect and saying, what can we do that's going to be different, that it's going to be unique, that it's going to capture the attention of a donor or somebody that wants to do a fundraiser for you, but that is going to be able to raise money so that we can continue to do our online suite of programs for children and families. So that's always what it gets back to for me.
Is there a myth, maybe a misconception that you always hear about the industry that you wish would be put to bed?
Oh, what a great question. This is such an interesting one for anybody in the charitable sector. There's a practitioner in our world, and he's also a really great author, comes out with some great stuff. His name's Dan Pallotta. And it's the admin cost myth. I think one thing that just drives me over the top is people say, well, what are your admin costs and what are your fundraising costs? And then you have to educate people, and rightly so. It's because this was again an old adage that you don't fund somebody that has too high of fundraising costs or administrative costs, because the best run charities have great infrastructure. They've invested in their HR, their technology, their professional development, and it thereby allows them to provide programs and services that we need to do our mission. And if we don't have those underpinnings, the same as any business, you can't actually do the best programs and services if you're underpaying your staff, if you don't have proper ergonomics in your office, if you're not encouraging them to be lifelong learners and invest in their professional development, you're never going to have a high functioning team that's going to be able to be there 100% for your mission based work. So I think that's the myth that I would really like to dispel is if you could invest $1 into something and your return on investment is $5, wouldn't you do that? And in our world, that would be a 20% admin cost, and would certainly be very acceptable. But people of being fed what I would consider an untruth, and that they need to turn their heads around on that and figure it out. If you've got a really good, well run charity, they're probably reaching high efficacy in their mission.
Personally, it could be professionally. What's something that you're curious about right now?
What am I curious about right now? I want to know, when are the kids going back to school, if they're going to go back to school in September. And not that I have school age children, but you know what it means to me is that if kids are going back to school in September, and that, the powers that be think that they're safe enough to go back to school, then I think we're safe enough to do a lot of things. And then, you know what, I can kids can go back to camp again. I can continue to do programs face to face. I know my team is just chomping at the bit to be face to face with the kids again. I think it breaks our hearts every day that we can't do our programs. It's so sad to know that we have this beautiful camp facility, and it's going to be idle for the most part this summer. We are going to be doing programs, uh, uh, kind of sort of programs. We're going to have two families that come out to use the camp for 3 nights each. So that's going to, at least it's not going to be completely shuttered this summer. But I think if we find that the kids are able to go back to school, I think life is going to be going back to normal again, or back to the new normal. Uh, and um, and our children will guide us on this. Depending on what they're able to do, they're going to guide us back to our new normal.
You mentioned online programs. Are there any that you'd like to spotlight?
Oh, you know what? They're just the most remarkable story. This is our silver lining. Is We wanted to do our peer program, which is pediatric exercise rehabilitative program for children with cancer. We wanted to get it out throughout the whole province anyway, and now we've been forced to do it through our online platform, and that's making sure that children that are going through that need some kind of rehab therapy because of the treatment, and the disease itself has rendered them much weaker. Balance and coordination are off, and that our exercise physiologist is able to lead them through a series of exercise and play that they're able to get their strength back and do a child's work, which is play. We're also doing online tutoring. We have a volunteer tutoring program to make sure that our kids that are in the thick of treatment are continue to be able to do their learning online, and that they're not being left behind in any way, shape, or form. That kids that are experiencing a lot of anxiety, I often describe these kids as their families in crisis, in a crisis. So they're already in a crisis, being that they're in the midst of fighting for their child's life as they get them through childhood cancer, and then you throw in a pandemic, so they're doubly crisised by this, and so they're going to have a lot of anxiety issues and isolation issues and that kind of thing. And so we're doing an online program through our child life specialist as well. So, we've got, and another one, our teen leadership program has been taken online as well. And so we've got four really top-notch online programs that are keeping our kids in touch, our families in touch. And then, because they're all missing camp so much, every Thursday night we have a virtual campfire, and there's counselors from around the world that have come back and are signing on to the Zoom meeting, and able to do some songs and some campfire skits, and just the kids are able to see some of their favorite people in the whole world are counselors, um, playing and singing and dancing with them again. And even though they can't be there in person, they're there. They can see them and they can hear it. So there's that connectivity. We're such social animals, and none this any less than anywhere else, that we have to see and feel and interact and reach out. And so these programs are doing that. And as an aside, they're also therapeutic, which the kids don't really care about, but I know their parents sure do.
Yeah, absolutely. What really was profound to me, what you said, was crisis in a crisis. It's really great to hear that you guys are still providing that connectivity. How has Calgary changed from when you first started your journey to now?
Well, that's interesting, because I'm a born and raised Calgarian, so everything has changed and nothing has changed. The city is probably still the very best place in the world to live. I've been to 32 other countries in my travels, and I know that Calgary is the place to be. We're going through so many difficult times right now, and the resilience of the human spirit always amazes me, and encourages me, that even though I know that things look so dark right now, that it's gonna change. It's gonna go back again. We're gonna bounce back from this too, because that's the Calgary spirit. And while so much has changed and people change, I think the spirit, it's just, it's that good karma that Calgarians possess, that we've got this entrepreneurial spirit, that anything is possible, and that when we're down on our luck, we help each other to get back up. Now, right now, we're all kind of down on our luck. And so it's going to take the collective spirit and wisdom and grace of every Calgarian and every Albertan to get us back on top again. And I know we're going to do it. I have faith.
What's one question that you never get asked that you wish you would be asked?
You know what? This is such a good question. Because you've mentioned a couple times the word entrepreneur. And I've never been considered an entrepreneur, although I am. So I would have liked to have been asked, what's it like to be an entrepreneur? Because even though I didn't start a for profit business, I started a charity, that it's still all of the elements are the same. My bottom line is called it's different than retained earnings. It's surplus, but all of the business elements are the same. And the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in people that start charities as well. So I guess it's just a difference of mindset that separates people that wouldn't consider me to be an entrepreneur, but I am, and
Yeah,
I have that
mhm.
spirit.
The entrepreneur spirit is very alive and well in Christine. Awesome. Well, I only have a couple more questions here. So, where can our listeners connect with you online, or even the charity online?
Yeah, you bet. Kidscancercare.ab.ca. We've got a great webpage. There's volunteer opportunities. There's opportunities to give and get involved. And it's a great way to stay in touch and sign up for our newsletter and do things like that, and just see what else we're all about. There's a lot of aspects of kids cancer care. I think people would be surprised at how much we impact a family, right from the minute of diagnosis through to thriving and surviving or bereavement. We're there for families throughout their entire cancer journey, and our webpage is probably the best place to find that story out. And they can certainly get in touch with me online there too.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you being on, Christine. I usually like to end the podcast with the guest asking a question to the audience, or even a quote or a story to leave them with the interview.
So this my little story would be something that my father said to us every night at dinner time. We had a we always had a family dinner. Came from a family of 5 kids, and my dad would start off the conversation at the dinner table with, "What did you do today to justify your existence?" And he wasn't being a mean, ogurely type of person. It was, "How was your day?" But it was also much deeper than that. It was a deep probing question of, what did you do today to make the world a better place? What did you do to make yourself feel good, somebody else feel good? What did you accomplish? What was a good thing in your day? And that's always been a guiding quote, I guess, for me, because it came from my dearly loved dad. And but it's also been a guiding force in helping me uh, create, write the story of kids cancer care and sustain it, and especially sustain it through different times as we're in today. What did I do to justify my existence today? Well, I'm journaling every day now, to which I hate writing things down, and so it's just giving me a little snapshot of what happened during COVID-19, and to capture and hold the lessons of this troubling time, so that we learn from this very difficult time, and that we don't let this crisis go without learning and taking advantage of it.